at that from the prevention standpoint is that prevents some of the long-term PTSD that families deal with.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and we have in this house had those communications many times, from the diagnosis point to the unfortunate passing of our daughter. Is that, really we all should be in some type of therapy to really kind of get our feelings out and have a way to express them when we can't speak to each other about it or whatever the case may be. None of us ever have, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think everybody's different in that sense. For me, this work, the nonprofit work and everything else has kind of been my therapy. That's been the way that I've kept it together, is to throw myself into this. And it's not for everybody. And we've also noticed along the ways that when families that we've been in contact with or been close to that either have lost a child or their child has been declared NED and they're in their 4 or 5 year mark and things like that, everybody takes a step in a different direction when those changes come in. Some people don't want to be part or known for this community ever again. They don't want any connection to cancer. They don't even want to think about it. They do that Homer Simpson meme, they back into the bushes and you never see them again. And some throw themselves into the work like this. And there's some middle ground there, but I think those are just two different directions that people go. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. But therapy or counseling or things like that are definitely, I think, is very important. And although we haven't done it, and not to say that we won't at some point, because everybody, goes through this differently. If everybody in one household goes through it differently, they express themselves differently. And it's an important part with, we talk about this. I talk about it with other parents, that there's an 80% rate of divorces and family separations essentially going through this disease and this diagnosis, because it is so hard mentally and physically, spiritually, everything on families. And it's not something where you fall out of love with people. It's just, it absolutely breaks you. And it's, we're lucky enough that didn't happen to us. And we found, essentially our therapy with our voice to be able to kind of keep the community together and be part of it. But yeah, therapy, I think, and counseling and things like that hold a really important role in this. And I'm not, like I said, I didn't shy away from it. I just threw myself into my work. That's how I deal with things. And I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but definitely don't discount the positive outcome of being able to speak to somebody about what you're going through that has zero bias about your life and everything you've been through. They're there to listen and offer guidance if they can.
Yeah. I mean, you hit it right on the head. And the whole timing thing is big. It took me 10 years to see a psychologist after my bone marrow transplant.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where we're going to sit on feelings, we're going to sit on there, and there's going to be days and there's going to be triggers and things that are going to bring things up. And they're coming, like I said, there may be a time when that happens for us, when we decide to go and speak to somebody that's, outside, that, not that there's any kind of trust issues, but it's one of those things where you can be open and free and know that information is safe with that one person. You can share things that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with a spouse or a family member or a friend. And so just take the opportunities if you have them. And your mental health as a parent is super important. Or a caregiver, because you're the rock for that person that's going through it. But at the same time, as a survivor, as a warrior going through this, don't discount your mental health and your ability to really kind of move forward after the diagnosis happened. Let me think here. So we'll go into a little bit different direction, just because I think we have to cover all these notes here now. You wrote a book, I think here I wrote down that you wrote a book here, and that's getting into the author phase of it, whether it's a children's book or handbook of sorts into how to deal with this. It's a kind of an enlightening thing and a way to give back in a very different way. So explain the book and explain the reason that you decided to do that.
Yeah, Smiley Smile is a book that's a picture book to teach kids about cancer. And the initial audience when I wrote the book was childhood cancer patients, as well as siblings, community members that may have a classmate diagnosed with cancer. And the more I started talking to the community, the more I realized parents were buying it if they were diagnosed with cancer, grandparents were buying it for their grandkids if they were diagnosed with cancer, just to help bring it down in age-appropriate terms. So the general overview of the book is Smiley's the main character, and his friends Rocky and Ollie, it's their journey together. And I'm very specific, and it's their journey together, because for me, it's not just the patient that's impacted, but it's, as I mentioned many times, the siblings, it's the friends, it's all the classmates, it's all these individuals. So there was a visual representation of, I can only include 3 characters, but these are all the individuals that are impacted and share their own stories, share their own emotions and feelings. It's not just the story of Smiley or the patient, but it's the story of the entire team. And the book, why I wrote it initially was I was trying to think a little bit outside the box about how, we could teach children about cancer if they don't have child life therapy, if they don't have other resources like some of the big hospitals do. A lot of academic medical centers are able to have child life departments, or they're able to have individuals that help teach kids about cancer and go into school settings to teach their classes. But the more and more I talk to individuals, the more and more I realize this isn't equitable across the board, and there isn't always the same level of philanthropic funding or the same level of foundation funding that's coming in from that standpoint. And that's really what inspired me to write the book. But then as I continued to look into the future within this area, I found a lot of amazing child life specialists that are trying to do the same thing. And they're trying to break down topics such as death by suicide or other illnesses that children undergo throughout their journey as a child, or even just topics that are very difficult. And cancer is a taboo subject, in our society still to this day, although rates are very high and people continue to get diagnosed, is, for no fault of their own, but parents don't want to either say the word cancer, or they just don't want their child to be exposed to that. But the reality is it's everywhere, unfortunately. So as I look into the future with this book and continuing to share it with the community, and I partnered alongside hospitals to get the resource into the hands of families, as well as school settings and nonprofits and things like that. And as I stepped into kind of the author octagon, for a lack of better terms, it really has allowed me to connect on a deeper level with individuals, but then also connect with, a whole new community of professionals. I moved from Brady the patient to Brady the professional, and can kind of find that middle ground. I will say, it was after completing a master's degree in children's literature. So I wanted to do some formal education myself, but a lot of individuals go into this space and they just do it. And I think that's my biggest suggestion. If you're thinking about writing a book, if you're thinking about publishing, is think with the idea of writing the story first and then publishing second. And then B, once you get into this space, it's all about finding your voice, finding your avenue, and finding your audience.
Yeah, I agree 100 times. I think just this past year, my wife jumped into that space and wrote a children's book that we were able to, get out to, and we donated a lot to our hospital last year, as well as just, being able to sell it. But it was a story that we literally wrote the book. Well, I say we. I didn't do anything except make the connections for her. I made the connections. I got it published, that kind of stuff. She wrote the book. It's her baby. But it was a way for us to, again, kind of not only give back to the community, but a way to connect with families in a different level, a different way. Whereas the book that she wrote, it's centered around kind of our story, centered around JC's story, but not once in the book do we ever mention cancer. And we did it for a reason, just to kind of be able to encompass everything that could be bad if something happens, and you can still be able to make adventures wherever you go. And that was kind of the idea behind it. And I think that has been really well received. And it's you, when you get into that space, I think it's scary at first, because am I going to be an author? I'm going to write a book. There's got to be all these steps. But really, it's not as difficult to do as one may think. And it's fun. It can be exciting to be able to get out there and have that opportunity to connect in such a different way with people of all ages. And like you said, that for grandparents who would buy, or parents would buy, Child Life that would be able to read those books to the patients coming in and things like that. It's an incredible thing to do. So again, I would also encourage anybody that if you're thinking about it, don't think about it. Just do it. Just get right into it.
I love that. And I love the story, and we'll have to check out your wife's book for sure. It's that audience is such a big piece, and I love that you really honed in on that, your wife honed in on that within the storytelling. Because I think for me, when I describe the audience, like my audience were people that were diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't some of the other things along the way that could happen. And I think that's very important for any author to think about is, as much as we hope every single person buys our book, we also need to realize that when you cast the net way too wide, you usually lose out in the process of actually getting the book out there to the people who need it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that we wanted to be very kind of open and broad with everything. And I think it's worked out really well, and it's a lot of fun. So we hope that we can kind of turn it into a series and continue to do it. And it's again, on that side, it's not for the money. It's not for the fame. It's not for any of that. It's just really being able to connect on such a different level that it gives that ability to kids going through something that I guess we missed out on. Our child missed out on going through this. So we're trying to give that back in a way so families don't feel that kind of aloneness or not really what to understand. So it's a cool avenue to take. So again, I'd recommend it to anybody. Just if you're going to do it, just jump into it. I wanted to ask you, because you had mentioned in the very beginning that your diagnosis came 20 years ago. And we've also mentioned Child Life. And first, I want to say that Child Life are the most incredible angels on this planet.
Yeah.
No people that we did not even know existed. But once you know they exist, they are part of your life and part of your family. How would you compare Child Life 20 years ago to what Child Life is now? Or is there even a difference? Because like I said, I didn't even know it was a thing until 2 or 3 in the morning when I was signing a consent form on the back of a tissue box, because that's all we had, that Child Life was going to come in and kind of explain things to our then 6-year-old daughter that we were too broken to do.
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is just the ability to adapt to technology and the awareness for the overall community to recognize that these are needed resources. When I was originally diagnosed 20 years ago, they still had the activities every day in the Child Life playroom. I would say I think a little bit different is everybody, regardless if you're diagnosed with cancer or just in the hospital for something else, would come to these activities. So there weren't individual playrooms for each disease or precautions. And obviously, as we look into the future, it's helping with infection risk and things along those lines. So positive for sure than it was then, but still the most loving people, the individuals that would break terms down, that I learned all the medical equipment I had in the hospital through hospital bingo on Thursdays. And hospital bingo is still happening every Thursday at Penn State Children's Hospital, which I love that that's the case. I mean, now they have a virtual option as well where you can tune into the TV and play along in your room if you don't feel well, which I think is amazing, that you have the ability to still go physically in person, but then you can also adapt to technology. I would say this was pre-iPad area, pre-laptop area. I had gotten to like a PSP, which were one of those PlayStation portables when I was diagnosed, and we wheeled a Wii cart in and out of the room if I wanted to play Wii instead of having a video game console in every room or TVs with Netflix or whatever. So it was very different, I would say, from that standpoint. But I would also say Child Life now, they're having more and more of a platform to be entrepreneur, to be everything that they always were, developing playbooks, developing books, developing medical equipment, all these other things. But now with social media, it's allowing them to spread their voice a little bit more. And I think one of the big things we can do as families is continue to advocate for the importance of child life in hospitals, whether that's continuing to try to get philanthropic funding, so donors giving to support these causes, or how can we get child life as a billable resource to insurance companies so then child life specialists can get paid more so they can have the resources in the future to be able to impact families in a different way and things like that. Because a lot of child life specialists now they're underpaid and they're leaving the field to become an entrepreneur or to do something else just because they can't make a living being the amazing individuals they are. And I think that's, as I look into the future and how I think we can continue to change, is advocating for the importance of this, because I think also people know what child life are, as well as they've been exposed to them, but they don't necessarily know that they're called child life. You think about all the individuals that have like toy drives at a hospital or a community center, and those toys are going to child life 99% of the time at the hospital, and they're interacting with child life specialists or people onboarding. So I would say, as we look into the future, just utilizing technology in a positive way, but then also not losing away from the basics of the human connection and how that can provide overall education.
Well, the human to human connection and the people. Let's just put it this way: in on a broad spectrum, it takes a very special individual to work in the medical world with children, because you are dealing with the most innocent of patients that often don't understand what's happening to them, and they're scared. And you're in that position to kind of create a fix for what's going on, but doing it in a way that doesn't add to that fear and that anxiety that they're feeling at such a young age. And these child life specialists come in with such a demeanor and understanding to what's going on that they can connect on a level that even as parents, we have a very close connection to our kids, obviously, but they can connect on a level that kind of gives them that one up on what we're able to do. And they provide them that sense of kind of just letting go and not having their walls up. And it's an incredible thing. And for us as parents, I'm not saying that we need a break in those hard moments, but it is definitely something that they provide. They provide for the kids, but they're also there for the families. Child life is very, very important to us based on, the ones that we were able to meet and be in connection with and stayed with us through the entire journey. I'm still in connection with them. I still talk to them to this day. We donate toys every single Christmas. We donate toys to them to fill that child life closet, because we know what it means to kids that are going through things and what it can provide, and the fact that they are incredibly underfunded. And it really is kind of a sad piece to look at, in the sense that I don't want to call them an afterthought in the medical world, but they're not really given the accolades that they should get. Not that any of them have ever asked me to be promoted. They're not those type of people. They're very humble, but they deserve so much, and they deserve so much credit for what they provide every single day to families, to children, to the medical world, all the way around, from just explaining a diagnosis to holding their hand when they're getting a blood draw, or taking their mind off of things when it's a really sad day or sad news comes in. And how to hell they don't break down more in front of these kids is beyond me, but I don't think it's because there's anything wrong with them. I think they have an incredible ability to kind of separate that, to ensure that they're not adding to what fear or anxiety these children are.
Yeah, it's 100%. And everything you touched upon just resonates with me, resonates, I'm sure, with many other families. And as we look into the future of child life specifically, I think it's sort of our advocacy that can say this is a preventative measure that we can implement to stop long-term hospitalizations, reduce the risk of having to use anesthesia during procedures. Maybe it reduces some of the long-term effects. And as we look into research too, I think this is a critical area that we need to think about, is we shouldn't just be thinking about drug discovery or understanding, but what are some of the areas like child life research that we can look into and find these opportunities to show the data about this preventing long-term hospital stays, this preventing some of the other areas in the future.
Yep. Well, I think we were right on the same page with this, and we were fortunate enough a few months ago to actually go to an event through the hospital where our daughter was treated, where the event was to celebrate child life and to really bring them to the forefront of everything that they do. That it's not just somebody that walks into the room with a toy. It is so much more. And to hear them speak personally about why they do what they do and not cry while they were doing it is incredible, because and you can see it chokes me up too, because what they provide and what they do and that connection that they have with these kids is unreal. And it's something that you just cannot match anywhere. And like I said, I had no clue in the world what they even were, or the department that it even existed, until that middle of the night meeting, that it really changed our life moving forward. So if you're thinking about it, and I'm proud to say that my daughter, that will turn 17 next month, is looking to a career of child life when she graduates high school, and I'm so proud of that. So, and that's just to honor, but that's just to honor her sister, but also that shows the family impact that they can have. And to keep me out of crying on the floor, let's just move to something else here. So you mentioned Penn State, so I wanted to ask you about THON. about something that I didn't even know existed. Again, I don't know everything about the pediatric cancer world, and I don't claim to. I find out new things every day. But that was brought to me by a friend of ours that I met through social media that actually went and was able to, I think he went to the THON, the store at Penn State. And can you tell me a little bit about that and kind of what they do?
Yeah, so THON is the largest student-run philanthropy in the world, and what exactly that means is there's 16,500 students that volunteer their time every year in a year-long fundraising effort, and then they have a culmination of a 46-hour dance marathon every February. And when I say dance marathon, people think, oh, are they dancing the entire time? Well, no, but I will say there's about 700 individuals that stand on their feet for 46 hours in solidarity for individuals that have experienced childhood cancer. And I've been to football games, I've been to basketball, huge sporting events. THON is the most breathtaking as well as the most incredible event that humans produce on this earth by far, that at least I've experienced in my 28 years of life. And what all the funds from the dance marathon go to is to support pediatric cancer care and research at Penn State Health Children's. And through this, it's called an organization called Four Diamonds, which was started by a grateful patient family about 55 years ago, I think, right at this time. And then the dance marathon started around the same time as well. So this has been going on for over 50 years, and all the monies go towards supporting these families. And what that means for a family is if you walk into the doors at Penn State Health Children's Hospital and you're diagnosed with cancer, you're under the age of 22, no questions asked, all of your medical bills are paid for that insurance doesn't cover, as well as you have those wraparound services such as child life, art therapy, music therapy, psychology, survivorship care, long-term. It's not just during your treatment, but it's until you're 30 years old, which is absolutely incredible for any family that's trying to transition their child from pediatric to adult care. And this dance marathon, as I said, has been going for 50 years, and there's organizations that raise $600,000, $700,000 per year for the cause. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. Students dedicate hours upon hours of volunteer time, and it's one of those revolutionary movement. And now that you have alumni that participated over 50 years ago, and then you have alumni like myself, so when I was at school at Penn State, I did various things, but then I was on the executive team my senior year. So I was one of 17 individuals essentially running a nonprofit, running year-long events, and then we had this dance marathon to raise money for childhood cancer. And we raised just over $10 million. This past year for THON 2024 or 25, in February, they raised $17.7 million. And this is all student run. I continue to say that because the students drive all this. They coordinate meetings that are after hours in class. They coordinate weekend meetings, events. They're working with university staff, but for the most part, like, the students are the ones driving this, and they transition year after year after year. So it's not like, someone that may be in a nonprofit or someone that may be fundraising where maybe they have the same job for 5 years. It's very rare that someone's doing the same job for more than a year. And you have people that graduate, you have students that, do something else. And that's the beauty of it, is that you have this revolutionary movement that college students are dedicating time outside their general studies to create a better future for pediatric cancer patients and their families.
I'm glad that you were able to kind of describe it more, that like it has a lot more meaning than reading it online, which is where I kind of was focusing on all of that. And it's, again, I look at it as a standpoint of kids that are advocates at such a young age that should just be focused on being kids. That's all they should worry about, not focusing on whether or not they can advocate for pediatric cancer awareness. And then you have college students, which, the stigma or not, they should be out partying, they should be whatever, doing their thing, they're learning new things in life, they're discovering who they are, and they're doing this, and they're focusing on such incredible, impactful work that will change essentially the way that medical care is given to kids and families and things like that for futures and generations to come. And that's, you've become such a person that you're caring about every other person. You're learning something new as you're growing up in life, and you're using it in a positive way. And I think that's the most incredible thing that you can do. And whether it's pediatric cancer or whether it's, another cause, the fact that you're spending your time doing something that is so impactful that's not necessarily benefiting you other than it makes you feel really good and you're positive about what you're doing, but you're benefiting so many other people. I can't say enough for it. And I don't know that I can dance for 46 hours, but I would like finding out about it this year. It would be, love to learn more about it and be able just to see it firsthand and things like that, because it's incredible. You feel like you're doing so much, and there's nothing to discount what any organization does across the country, whether it's toys, whether it's care packages, whether it's, family support with money or hotels, or you're doing a 46-hour marathon like you. Everybody has a huge impact on this community and on the change moving forward. But it's incredible to see that it's at really a college level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm blown away by it. So maybe I'll start doing some squats or something, because I don't think I can stand.
Well, you have to be a college student to dance. So yeah.
I was once a college student. I just need to enroll for one class. That'll do it. But that's incredible though. I'm excited to hear about it. I'm excited to hear that I saw that you were, in the magazine to, be a part of that. It's really kind of a cool thing. So that's exciting. I wanted to follow up then and ask you, because we had spoke about this not too long ago, but I wanted to ask you about the Childhood Cancer Prevention Consortium and what that is and what it means and what it can be done to really kind of change things moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. In October of 2023, we hosted the first ever Childhood Cancer Prevention Symposium, which brought individuals from various areas across the country, institutions, and even some institutions outside of the United States of America who have a focus on childhood cancer prevention in some way. Maybe it's doing research on like heavy metal toxicity, or maybe it's looking at environmental factors, or looking at treatment options and shared stories and things like that. So as a result of that symposium, we held the second one at Texas Children's this past February. And as a result of the symposium in February, was starting the Childhood Cancer Prevention Consortium. There's various consortiums in the childhood cancer community, but at the root, it's bringing together nonprofits, business leaders, hospitals, academia, medicine, everyone who wants to be a part, even government, together under one roof for a common goal of how do we prevent childhood cancer? And I look at it from three lenses. You're preventing initial onset. If you're unfortunately diagnosed with the disease, you're preventing side effects during treatment, and then you're preventing the long-term side effects from treatment. So as you go into survivorship, hopefully we get everybody to that point, but survivorship not just for the child, but the parents, siblings, friends, etc. from there. So as we look into developing this consortium, what we're doing now is we're bringing on partners. We're bringing on a scientific review board that will look through research, as well as we're bringing on nonprofit partners that will commit a financial commitment. But what that allows them to do is we're going to host meetings every year and fund the best research and bring ideas to the forefront in childhood cancer prevention specific. So there's physicians out there, if they're interested in doing research in this area, reach out. Right now we're in the growing phase, so we're onboarding partners, we're getting people to join in the journey with us. But this is really a revolutionary way to think about it. There's consortiums for specific brain cancers like DIPG or DMG, and there's also various other consortiums from there. But this is in addition to, I would say. So if your organization's doing one thing in childhood cancer, but you're looking to be a part of a group in another, I highly suggest joining this, because for us, we're thinking a little bit more outside the box at this point, from the standpoint, and we're open to ideas, to suggestions. If you have thoughts or ideas on how you can be a part of this, come the future, because I envision this starts as Childhood Cancer Prevention Consortium, but it's really about a children's health consortium to promote children's health for the future.
And so, like you said, if there's any interest in something like that and just kind of getting into a different avenue of what you're doing, your advocacy, your nonprofit work, or just, ideas, things like that, please reach out. And where can they find information about this?
Yeah, so they can reach out directly to me. So reach out to bclucas15@gmail.com or inquire on my author website at bradylucasauthor.com, and I'll get you the information.
Perfect. Yeah. So if anybody is interested in that, I mean, we have spoken about it before. I still have the information. I'm sorry, I'm very behind in getting back to people on that. But if you're interested in it, it's that different avenue, that different way to be able to get involved and hopefully tackle this issue in a different way and in a positive way, and alongside of a lot of great and incredible minds that will be able to make a difference in this community. So please take a look at that. I will link the email as well as the website in the description of wherever this is posted, so everybody will be able to get that contact. Is there anything else that we did not cover, or that I didn't bring up, because I tend to go in that direction sometimes, that you would like to bring up or share?
Just think the importance of having these open dialogues and conversations with each other, with scientists, with doctors, nurses, etc. I think also I always want to share my gratitude to everyone that's not a patient within the childhood cancer community. And I say that because there's so many individuals that are impacted, like we've stressed and mentioned many times, and maybe they're not given the recognition, or maybe they're just not the resources to give the recognition. And really, one of my big focuses moving forward is that too. It's how do you provide the skills and resources for coping mechanisms for families as well as providers moving forward. I would also say, if you're interested in connecting with me directly, go to bradylucasauthor.com. Follow me on social media at BradyLou on Instagram and X. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, Brady Christopher Lucas. And like I said, let's keep this conversation and dialogue talking. And Curtis, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And thanks so much for all that you're doing to promote some positivity in a topic that's very hard to deal with.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, honestly. It's an honor for me, because it allows me, like I said, to really kind of continue in sharing our daughter's story, but the story of so many out there that I feel like they feel like they don't have a voice, and we have to step up and be that voice, especially with the kids that are going through this. I think they're not given the respect that they deserve in understanding what they're going through, and they have a voice, but unfortunately it's not listened to as much as it should. And so we have to step up. And that's really the kind of the basis behind everything that I do, is being able to be a voice for these kids and these families, and letting them know just how incredible they are. I don't like necessarily be told to stay strong, but at the same time, you as families, you as parents, you as caregivers, siblings are huge. You guys are so much of an impact and so much of a reason that these patients, that these families can get through things, is because they have a support system. So find that support. Don't be afraid to lean on people. I will ask that I ask this of every guest, to just give, and you did a little bit, but I want to see if you have anything specific. I always ask the guests to kind of leave us with advice, leave parents, families, even the children that are being diagnosed or going through this, however you choose to kind of direct it, but leave advice behind from your own experiences.
I'm thinking about this real quick. I know
That's
you
all right.
cut it, so. I'd say the journey looks different for everyone, and social media can play the comparison game a lot, especially with some families going through certain things and some families going through other things. And your journey is a unique one that your family has. I would also say, for parents, you're doing the best you can do with the information you have at that current time of life. Therefore, if you look back years later and unfortunately a child has a long-term side effect like myself or something along those lines, give yourself grace, because it's not easy as a parent to make these decisions, especially when there's many decisions happening at once. And then I would say, finally, for the patients that have the chance to grow up and live healthy lives and for the most part thrive, continue to get involved or spend your time how you want to spend your time. And maybe that's in the childhood cancer space. Maybe that's nothing to do with childhood cancer and you just want to be the best wife or husband or spouse possible, but get involved in your own time.
I think it's perfect. I mean, like we said, we all move forward in different ways. We all take this in different ways and choose to kind of live it after the fact in different ways, but none of it's wrong. It's all individual. So it has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, and I think there were so many good things that we covered. This is going to be a great outlet for people to really get some good information, and hopefully, like I said, one, if you're going to be an author, just jump into it. If you're going to get involved in something, creating nonprofits, or you just want to be an advocate, or whatever the case may be, just jump in. Don't be afraid. Take that leap. And know that you've got a community here to support you no matter what decisions you decide to make. So thank you so much, Brady, again, for joining me today and hanging out. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I look forward to eventually meeting in the future.
Yes, me as well, Curtis. Thanks so much.
Thank you.